Shalom, Yahba Shim Yahshai Berkathum. To all my brothers, Yahweh Shemal, Ethaba Shim Yahshai, to all my sisters. My name is Officer Isaiah Allah from the Boston camp. We are the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out of 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We've been teaching so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, so-called Native Indians, that they're the Lord's chosen people according to the Bible. When you carefully read these scriptures, we are the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. We've been teaching this truth since 1969 under Commander General Yohana. Today is the Boston history class. We have it every Monday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So definitely tune in every Monday. Tuesdays we have Brotherhood class. Wednesday we have the Law class. And we're gonna talk about a lot of things are going on right now on the planet, and this truth is being pushed out by the men in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, and this truth has been pushed since 1969. And what you got to realize is that we at the end right now, man. You know what I mean? We right around the corner. And the closer we get to the end of our oppressive society and the beginning of us reigning with Christ, you're going to start to see the spirit of Christ being snuffed more than ever. Meaning, as we're pushing out the spirit of Christ all over the globe, all over the planet, our enemy, our oppressor, is using all the devices and resources that he can to keep the biggest secret tucked away, brushed under the rug. And the biggest secret that is being revealed as we speak is that the people that have been considered niggers, and the people that have been considered spicks, and the people that have been considered savages, that they're the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. When you look into when you tie it biblically, we are the Hebrew Israelites. As you know, recently Nick Cannon, the beef between Nick Cannon and Viacom, and I named this class Salaki. This history class is about the Khazaharian Empire. We'll try to tie it into recent events that occurred. I labeled it the Synagogue of Satan, which is a big discussion. You know, a lot of Christians, black Christians at that, would say that the UPK is the Synagogue of Satan. But when it's referenced to the Jewish religion, they have no comment. They stray away from they stray away from what is a major violation if you say it. Anything that's anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist. When the Zionist Jew is the one that is in rulership of the planet, he's the one that owns a majority of the airwaves. He's the one that controls the content that your children listen to. He's the one that controls the contents that we absorb and we digest, and we carry out what we see visually. For those that are weak and don't have spiritual discernment, can be caught up in a web of devices that these Satanists that proclaim to be Jews the devices that they use to try to decapitate us spiritually, right? But straight, we're gonna get to some scriptures first before we get into this. If we have any questions online, let's get them questions together. I'm gonna pull up some of my bookmarks, and we're gonna go in on this topic today, right? But if you have any questions, I'll give it a sec for any questions you might have online. Let's get it. Let's get them questions out the way. Now more than ever is the time to really put on the Spirit of the Lord. You know what I mean? Put on the whole armor, because we are under, as the children of the Lord, we are under major attack right now. And it's going to get worse. Now more than ever is the time to listen to the priests and prophets of the Lord. The men that gave it all up. The men that have maintained their integrity. The men that care about honor. And the men that truly care about their people by giving up their life to save yours. Why don't you consider the priests and prophets in the UPK? You might not necessarily agree with what we say, but you see the miracles that go on in this place every day. You see the brothers and sisters that are being pulled out of hell in this place, right? You don't see us in a hypocritical format. You don't see us laying down our swords, but we're continuously pushing, trying to push the Spirit of the Lord on the planet, trying to wake up brothers and sisters, right? But yeah, if you have any questions, let's get the questions out the way. Let's not stray from that. Any questions online, ask your questions. If you are tuned in, ask your questions. All right? I'll wait a little bit, another minute, and then we're going to get started. Okay. Okay, and we're going to get in the history of who the Khazaharian, who are the descendants of the Khazaharian people, the Khazaharian Empire. But before we get to that, since I don't see any questions, let me just double check. I don't see any questions online. Let's get right to it, right? We know that there's a beast on this planet that is running the show. This beast is a wicked landlord. You know what I mean? He's doing a terrible job as a landlord, right? And we know that this beast, our oppressor, runs all the resources, right? He runs the airwaves. He runs the financial system, right? He runs the housing market, right? He runs Hollywood, right? He runs damn near every aspect or every resource needed for survival on this planet, right? He owns all the land, right? He goes to and fro seeking whom he may devour. He goes up and down the planet, destroying everything in his path. He's like a plague. He's like a virus. Our oppressor was given the earth by the Most High. And let's find and let me prove that real quick. All right? Let's go to Job chapter 9 verse 24. It says this: the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, The Lord is the one that establishes rulership on the planet. And in Job 9:24, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. The wicked that it's talking about, who controls the cable access channels? Who controls the internet? Who controls the World Bank, the central bank? Who controls the housing markets? Who controls 90% of what you watch on television? The wicked, our oppressor. But amongst our oppressor, there is the chief tribe of our oppressors that is the ruling class that receives billions of dollars from the U.S. every year, right? That claims to have had the worst Holocaust in history, when in actuality, Black and Hispanic people and so-called Native Indian people have had the worst Holocaust in history. These people don't have to wait in line for government assistance. It's a phone call away. They have their own neighborhoods with their own police force, right? These people are what you call fugitives and a vagabond. They're culture bandits is what they are. Culture bandits. So let's read it one more time. It says, Job chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Right? The wicked is the one that runs this earth right now. Right? So we have to really understand that these people are running around in the planet with a stolen identity. And the one thing, black man, that you should fight for, the one thing that you should prioritize in your life in order to restructure, in order to fix the hellish. Oh, Salakia. I don't know if I'm online, but I think it's getting a little choppy, but I should be back. The one thing that you should fight for is your identity. And there's a bastard on the planet that has taken your identity and is parading around as the children of the Lord and has caused the whole world to cry for his suffering and for his cause, right? And this goes back to this whole anti-Semitic police force that's in place that has, I thought that the soldiers in this country fought for the freedom of speech, right? But there's a certain kind of speech that you must snuff, that you should not propagate on the planet, or it's considered anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist. The whole idea of freedom of speech is a joke if you can't exercise it freely. And in what occurred with Nick Cannon, the brother dropped the ball. Now, why did the brother drop the ball? The brother dropped the ball because there was something that was more important than fighting for his heritage, fighting to get back his identity, fighting to preserve the truth, right? There was something a little bit more important. And that thing that was more important for Nick Cannon was the money, right? Nick Cannon is a good boy. Don't we all agree? He's a good boy. And when I say he's a good boy, I'm speaking in a master-slave relationship. Nick Cannon is a good boy. When master comes around, he wags his tail. Master rubs his head. Nick Cannon is an excellent servant in the eyes of our oppressor. But Nick Cannon, he did one thing that put him in the jam that he's in right now. he decided to speak the truth. He decided to go out of his element of servitude to our oppressor and speak the truth. Now, it baffles me, right? You can claim to be any religion. You can claim to be anything that you want on the planet. And there's no beef with that. There's no controversy if a black man says, I'm Muslim, which is an Arab religion. There's no controversy when a black man says, I am Buddhist, and it's an Asian religion. But the one thing that the black man wants to reclaim that is rightfully his is his own identity, and he gets crucified. Let me let you ponder on that real quick. The black man wants to claim his own identity, and he gets crucified. And he can pull up the records to show, which is what we do every single day. We pull up the records to show that we are the children of the Lord. That the so-called Negro, the so-called Hispanic, and the so-called Native Indian are the children of the Lord. Right? Now that just shook. Listen, me saying that could shut down this transmission right now. Right? Because who owns Facebook? Who owns YouTube? Who owns the airwaves? Our oppressor owns it. And he is policing the content that's coming out of it. Right? Now, the only benefit of being in the UPK is that our oppressor wants to keep us in the dark. So we can blaze all day and say that our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. That the so-called Jewish man is a fugitive and a vagabond. And he should be charged for identity theft. One of the biggest crimes that our oppressor has committed is identity theft. Now, in this history class, we're gonna really get more history on who the Khazaharian people were, who the Khazars were. We're gonna really dive into some history on that. Now, this has been a topic of discussion that's been much debated by scientists. That they've gone as far as DNA evidence to tie the Ashkenazi Jews with the Khazarian Empire, and it's a very interesting but limited history where the records either have been salvaged somewhere that we can't find, or the eyewitnesses of the events during the Khazarian dynasty have either been fabricated, or there's just limited or known historical findings of this empire. But we do know one thing, is that we can easily pull up the records to show that the man who considers himself who calls himself Jewish today is a convert, meaning he was able to take our records and emulate himself as us, and because he's able to do that, he conquered the world. Right? So now, before we get started, where do you think I want to go? Let's go to Cain and Abel, right? In the book of Genesis, right? Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve, right? And as you know the story, when you read the story, Cain slew his brother Abel, and then lied to the Most High when asked where his brother was. That's where you get the whole, am I my brother's keeper? Now, the one interesting thing about Cain in correlation to our European oppressors is that Cain, just like our European oppressors, was a fugitive and a vagabond, right? And he was a wanderer, is what you would, in other sense, right? So it's suggested, I'm not going to say it is, but it's suggested from the sources that I've read that the word Khazar, when you go and really, when you cross-reference the different languages, the word Khazar means wanderer, right? The Khazars were a semi-nomadic people. And you really have to look at a map of where the Caucasus Mountains were, right? And the people that were, these semi-nomadic people were Caucasoids, is what I like to call them, right? There would be the descendants of the so-called Caucasian man today that dwelt in high places, that dwelt in the mountains. And we'll get a better understanding of that. And they were able to, through conquerorship, through wars, they were able to have a vast empire from 650 AD for about 300 years to about 900 AD. And what we'll get into is how they were positioned, meaning you had the Byzantine Empire to the east. Then you had the Mohammedan Empire to the west, and they were the mediators between the two. You'll start to understand how the trade routes worked around that time, and how they were the mediator between the East and the West when it came to the trade routes. And they were able to succumb to so much wealth because of the taxes that they've institutionalized during these trade routes, right? But before we do that, let's get back to Cain and Abel. Cain slew his brother Abel. And the Lord had cursed Cain, right? This is it. I know Christians, y'all like to do away with the Old Testament, and you're fools. And you carry yourself as fools because you live in the Old Testament right now with the COVID-19. That's a little fun fact, right? But let's go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 14, right? Now, keep in mind, right? Cain was cursed by the Most High because of what he did to his brother Abel. Because the Most High said, thy brother's voice, the Most High said, the voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. Right? And it's the same thing that happens today. The voice of our brothers and sisters that have been slaughtered by the so-called, by our oppressor, is crieth unto the Most High from the ground. Right? If you want to understand the cause of plagues and how COVID-19 abrupted the whole world and the kingdoms of this world, the Most High hears the cries. The Most High hears the cries of the brothers that have been slaughtered, that are in the ground today. He hears it, right? But let's go. Genesis chapter 4, verse 11. It says this. And now art thou cursed from the earth. So the Most High cursed Cain, right? Which had opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand, because Cain was the first murderer. So if you want to understand the criminal characteristics of your oppressor, the first thing you'll understand is that he was a liar. The second thing you'll understand about his criminal elements is that he's a murderer, right? And that he has the spirit of Cain, who was the first murderer. And he also has the spirit of the serpent in the garden, who was the first liar, right? And our oppressor has committed such a heinous act and has deceived the world with his lies by claiming to be the real Jews in the Bible, by claiming to be the Hebrew Israelites, the ancient people of this book. And that's one of the greatest lies that have been told. And when he claims it, and because he claimed it, he has put pressure upon society for anything that comes against this lie. And he has labeled it as you being anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist, which is a crime in America. Lord, is that a crime? Right? God forbid you tell your oppressor that he is not the real Jew that the Bible speaks of, and that he was a convert, that he was a wanderer, he was a fugitive and a vagabond, that he's a culture bandit that takes on every other culture but his own, right? That he originally, his natural habitation is the Caucasus Mountains, right? Let's keep reading. A fugitive, it says, Salakia, verse 12, Genesis chapter 4, verse 12, it says, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. Here's one thing that our oppressor knows, right? It says that the Romans understand these dark sayings. Here's what I'm going to tell you is this. Our oppressor was cursed by the Most High. The Most High gave our oppressor the spirit of Cain. And because our oppressor has the spirit of Cain, those curses come along with it. And what you have to understand, it says, when thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth her strength. Meaning our oppressor does not have a green thumb when it comes to agriculture, right? Because he was cursed. If you were to do a competition of who has the best agriculture system in the world, our oppressor would be ranked last. He does not have a green thumb, which is why when good ship Jesus landed in Jamestown, Massachusetts in 1611, and they came across our brothers, our Seminole Indian brothers, right? The tribe of Reuben, right? And they came across what we call our native Indian brothers. They had to teach them how to survive, right? During the Spanish Inquisition, because the Lord cursed the grounds of our oppressor and affected his way of surviving through agriculture, he had to go and when he came across our brothers in the Caribbean, our so-called Ephraimite brothers, our Simeonite brothers, the natives of that land, the Mayans, the the natives in Hispaniola, he had to bring some of those slaves back to Europe to help with their agricultural system. Because for all we know, they were just eating potatoes, right? And so he needs slaves to build his agricultural system. He needs it. Because when he tilleth the ground, it doesn't bring forth its strength. Let's keep reading. Now here's the key to all this. The Lord said this in Genesis 4:12. A fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. A fugitive is someone that is constantly on the run. He's a wanderer, right? And a vagabond. Now this is what we want to look up. Let's go to the Merriam-Webster. Let's look up the word vagabond. Right? Actually, let's look up both words because I need these two words as we go along with this history class. Right? A vagabond is this: a person who wanders from place to place without a fixed home, one leading a vagabond life. A vagabond does not have a home. But here's what our oppressor does. Because he is a vagabond, he takes everyone else's home. When you see the European man come into your land, just understand that he's not come for peace. Just understand when he shakes your hand, he has a sword behind his back. He's ready for war, right? A wanderer does not have a home. And so what our oppressor does is he takes everyone else's home. He took the so-called native Indians' homes, right? He took the natives in Hispaniola and the natives in Puerto Rico and Mexico and Guatemala and South America. He took all their homes as well, right? Anywhere he goes across the planet, he is going there to conquer and divide. Listen, when he comes into your land, he does not plan on leaving. Right? Now let's go back to what's a fugitive now, right? Let's get the definition of what a fugitive is. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Viacom needed brothers like Nick Cannon to make to get a revenue of $1 billion for a show like Wild 'N Out. Viacom needed us to establish their wealth. They needed us, our minds, to be poisoned with their filth, with their propaganda, to become the masters, the king, to become kings and queens on the planet, right? Because whatever they sow does not is hindered because they're cursed, and so they need the children of Israel, the real children of Israel, to amass their wealth. What Nick Cannon did not understand is that your money and your fame is not more important than your honor and integrity. And what he displayed to the world by apologizing to these imposters is that he had no integrity, that he had no honor, that he was not willing to stand for his people when the push came to shove, when the pressure was on. And here's what I love about the brothers and the sisters in the UPK. They will not bow down the knees to Baal. The Lord has reserved 7,000 men that will not bow the knees to Baal. These brothers and sisters in this school care about their honor, reverence, integrity. And it's a hard thing to do. It is a hard thing to do, right? In a couple minutes, we'll get started. But I wanted to bring that up because now we go back, right? The Khazaharian Empire got dismantled, I want to say fully around 1000 AD, somewhere between the space of 1000 AD to about 1100 AD, right? But it was a pretty extensive dynasty that went on for about 300 years. And so we're going to get into that and really understand that and really tie the link between the so-called Jewish man today who has converted and stole our identity and now has convinced the world of a lie that he is the children of God, right? I remember one time I went to church, right? This was many winters ago. And the one thing I always noticed was that they would always say, "Oh, we need to pray for Israel. We need to pray for Israel." And Israel was always the centerfold. And I'm talking about, this is a black church. Black people are in this church. We need to pray for Israel. We need to pray for Israel. I'm like, why are we praying for Israel again? And it almost, I didn't know this at the time, but now that I look back, when they were saying we need to pray for Israel, and many Christian churches do that, when they were saying we need to pray for Israel, what they were really saying is that our so-called oppressor is the children of God, and that black and Hispanic people have been grafted into the family. That's what they're saying. Meaning, that whole idea of we need to pray for Israel is you convincing the whole congregation that they're the Gentiles and that the so-called white man are the Israelites, and then your pork chop eating preacher will convince you that you are a Gentile being grafted in. And so now, every church service you're going in talking about, we need to pray for Israel. We need to pray for Israel. Right? When you are in the ghettos and barrios, when Israel is doing just fine, they receive billions of dollars every year from the United States. Billions. Right? For the so-called Holocaust. The Germans are still paying reparations. And what about you, black man? What about you, Hispanic man? I'm talking to the Christians today that go to church, and I'm telling the truth, right? And what I've noticed, here's another funny thing, right? You go in the Christian church. What I've noticed is that they'll bring some white pastor from who knows where to come up and speak to the congregation. And when this white man walks into the building, he gets praised. And he's also pointing to, we need to pray for Israel. We need to pray for Israel. That's how much they want us to feel the sympathy and the pain of what happened to the Jewish man during the Holocaust. When in actuality, what Hitler was saying to those imposters, which he knew they were imposters, he said, well, if you want to be black, then I'll make you black. And he torched them all, and he torched them the hell up and made them black all right. Hitler knew that they were not the Israelites that the Bible speaks of. He knew that they were converts, and he knew that they were imposters. Because when you're high up on that ladder, you have access to maybe certain resources that the commoner does not have. You get a certain kind of intel that maybe the commoner does not have. And he knew that those people were phony. And what Hitler did not like was the fact that they were controlling every aspect of business in Germany, right? When it came to the financiers and when it came to the business sector, the so-called Jewish man was running the show. And why I'm bringing that up is because I want to bring you back to how the Khazaharian Empire got down. When it came to the business sector, they were running the show because they ran the trade routes between the Byzantine Empire, which was predominantly Christian-based, and the Mohammedan Empire to the west, which was predominantly Muslims, right? So now the Khazarians were in between the two. And so they had to find what I call neutral ground. And if the Khazarians decided to go the Christian route, then they would have. If they decided to go the Muslim route, they would have beef with the Christians. You got to think, you got to remember the Crusades, right? The Crusades played a pivotal role because as these Christian mercenaries was going around and saying either Christ or the sword, the Muslim mercenaries were going around under the pretense of Allah, which started with Muhammad, either Allah or the sword. So if you're in betwixt the two, now it's a chess game. Now you have to neutralize it, and we'll talk about how the conversion through Christianity came into play. And it mainly came into play through what they call the Khagans, or the emperors, or the kings, and the royal families that took on that converted and took on Judaism, which was influenced throughout the whole empire, right? But at the same time, what they also did was they allowed any religion to come, whether any pagan religion, Christianity, Muslim, they allowed all that to come into the empire, right? And they were given, and what was interesting is they allowed them to be judged by their own laws, by setting up different judges depending on the religious sect. If that makes sense. But okay, so it's 8 o'clock. Let me pull up one real quick that I found very interesting. Let's go to bookmarks. I bookmarked a couple of things here but there was one in particular that I wanted to pull up. Okay. Salaki, bear with me. Let me just see. Salakia. Let me just pull this up real quick. Let me get a Let me get a good one real quick. All right. So, let me just see if there's any questions here. We're going to get right to it now. Just want to pull up a quick something I bookmarked earlier. Salaki, bear with me. Okay. All right, so we're going to go to... Let's go here real quick. Let me see if this is the one. Let me pull this up real quick. Something real quick. This is Khazaharian.com is what I'm going to pull up, right? All right, let's read it. The history of Khazaria presents us with a fascinating example of how Jewish life flourished in the Middle Ages, right? In a time where Jews were persecuted throughout Christian Europe, the kingdom of Khazaria was a beacon of hope. So what it was saying here is that the persecution of the Jews started off with the Roman Catholic Church, and it also started off under Muhammad, right? You understand, Muhammad was influenced by the by our laws and our creeds and our culture. And so before then, the so-called Muslims used to worship, damn near every god, damn near 360 gods. And so they were polytheists. They became monotheists when Muhammad observed how we got down, how the Israelites got down, and this is how they became monotheists. But Islam and Christianity has always been a bloody religion. And it expanded and was populated by the sword. So around this time, what was going on was that the Jews were being persecuted all over, right? By the Christian and Muslim factos, right? But let's keep reading. Jews were able to flourish in Khazaria because of the tolerance of the Khazar rulers, who invited Byzantine and Persian Jewish refugees to settle in their country. Due to the influence of these refugees, the Khazars found the Jewish religion to be appealing and adopted Judaism in large numbers. This is the same thing that Muhammad did. He found Israelite. He found the Israelites to be appealing, and how their culture got down, and the fact that they only worshiped one God, and he adopted really a form of Judaism, but it's under a Muslim pretense, right? Let's keep reading. Most of the available information about the Khazars come from Arabic, Hebrew, Armenian, Byzantine, and Slavic sources, most of which are reliable. There is a large quantity of archaeological evidence concerning the Khazars that illuminates multiple aspects of the Khazarian economy. Now, the Khazarians had a huge economy because, like I was mentioning earlier, they were the ties between the East in the Byzantine Empire and the West, the Mohammedan Empire. And So they were into arts, crafts, trade, agriculture, fishing, the whole nine. And they were in betwixt these two empires. All right, let's keep reading. The Khazars were a Turkic people who originated in Central Asia. The early Turkic tribes were quite diverse, although it's believed that the reddish hair was predominant among them prior to the Mongol conquest. In the beginning, the Khazars believed in the Tengri shamanism. Now, I want to bring up this Tengri shamanism, right? Prior to the so-called Jewish man converting to Judaism, you want to get an idea of what God he believed in before that. So now there was a specific deity that they worshipped, which was the Tengri shamanism, right? And we want to get that real quick. Let me get that real quick. All right, I'll tell you what that is. So the Tengri shamanism, right? Okay, so the Tengrism, also known as Tengrism, or Tengrianism, is an ancient and medieval Central Asian, Eurasian steppe sky god, Tengri, centered state religion, as well as a number of modern Turco-Mongolic native religious movements and teaching. It was the prevailing religion of the Turks and Mongols, including Bulgars and Xingnu, Huns, and possibly the Manchus and the Magyars, as the religion of the several medieval states, right? So this was a sky god that they worshipped, right? And this is what they worshipped before the became fell under the umbrella of Judaism, right? Now keep that in mind. All right? So this is the God that they worship. We're not gonna go too far into it. But let's go back to it though. Let's go back to what we was just reading. Okay. So it says, in the beginning, the Khazars believed in the Tengri shamanism, spoke a Turkic language, and were nomadic. So if you want to know what nomadic was, Salakia, let me just pull it up. We got to go into the nomadic tribes, right? And so nomadic tribes, let's read the definition. Remember earlier we talked about Cain and Abel and how the Most High cursed Cain and said, when he tills the ground, it should not yield henceforth, and that you shall be a fugitive and a vagabond, right? So the Turk nomads were a nomadic tribe, right? And the word nomadic means this. It means roaming about from place to place aimlessly, frequently, and without a fixed pattern of movement, right? When the Israelite school of universal practical knowledge teaches that our oppressor, the Jewish man, the ones that run Viacom, our oppressor is a fugitive and a vagabond. He's a nomad. He's of a nomadic tribe, and the definition of nomadic means roaming about from place to place aimlessly, frequently, or without a fixed pattern of movement. meaning they don't have a direction of where they're going. They roam about aimlessly. And because he was blessed with the sword, and because our oppressor was blessed in the financial sector by the Most High, where he goes with the sword. They were a warlike tribal people, right? Imagine different tribes of Edomites, of Caucasians, right? That are just roaming around aimlessly from place to place like fugitives and like vagabonds, right? A nomadic tribe is like saying it's like describing a tribe that is like a vagabond is what it's saying, right? And this is very important that we bring that up. But let's keep reading, right? Keep that in mind. Later, it says this: in the beginning, the Khazars believed in Tengri shamanism. We spoke about that. That's the sky god they believed before Judaism. Spoke a Turkish language. Now, if you try to figure out the difference, if you go through different sources to try to understand this Turkic language that they spoke, it's almost lost in history, that language that they spoke, right? But let's keep reading. And were nomadic meaning they were wanderers. They were vagabonds, like I explained earlier. Later, the Khazars adopted Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. These are the three things that the Khazars adopted, right? Learned Hebrew, right? This wasn't their original tongue. Remember, they spoke a Turkic language, right? The people of Viacom, prior to Hebrew, they spoke a Turkic language, right? Learned Hebrew and Slavic and became settled in cities and towns throughout the North Caucasus and Ukraine. They were mountain dwellers, these people. The people that are at Viacom, their descendants were mountain dwellers. They were Caucasoids. They came from the Caucasus Mountains. And they wandered aimlessly, right? The Khazars had a great history of ethnic independence extending approximately 800 years from the 5th to the 13th century. Let's keep reading. Now, if you want to know where the Caucasus Mountains were, you got to go along. If you look at the map of Russia, you got to go along the southern borders of Russia, right? More towards like Ukraine and Georgia. You go along those southern borders. Those are mountainous regions. These is where these cave dwellers situated themselves. And they coasted all along those mountainous regions, going back and forth aimlessly. The people at Viacom, their descendants are cave dwellers. Nick Cannon, I'll say it for you, all right? Their descendants are cave dwellers, and they are descendants of the Khazaharians. Let's keep reading. The earliest history of the Khazars in southern Russia, prior to the middle of the 6th century, is hidden in obscurity. From about 550 to 630, the Khazars were part of the Western Turkish Empire, ruled by the Celestial Blue Turks, or what they call the Cop Turks, right? When the Western Turkish Empire was broken up as a result of civil wars in the middle of the 7th century, the Khazars successfully asserted their independence. Yet the Khaganate is like saying a king or an emperor or a royal family, under which they have lived provided Khazars with their system of government. So the Khazars ended up taking their system of governance. So when you see the word Kagan, Khazars had a system where they had a Kagan and they had what they call a bet, right? The Kagan was like, he didn't play a major role. He was like the king. The bet was like, he was the one that ran the military operations and all that, right? So the first was greater than the lesser, right? But let's keep reading. For example, the Khazars follow the same guidelines as the Coptic Turks regarding the succession of kings, which is what I just read. What I just said. All right. So now let's look at the political power. Right. We're gonna get into that. Right. So now, don't get it twisted. Right. A lot of this could be common knowledge. A lot of this you just have to tie different resources to get the gist of who these people really are and where they really come from. Right. You know, now when you think about the Middle East and you think about Palestine in the so-called Israeli man over there, and you're trying to figure out what is this fight about, right? You have the Palestinians and you have the Arabs and you have the Israeli man, and he is in the midst of what's about to propagate, which is World War III, right? After World War II, the so-called Jewish man, he went to the UN and said he needed his own state. He needed to separate from his enemies to be able to go and establish his own land, right? And this is how the so-called Israeli man ended up in Israel today, right? This is how the so-called Jewish man ended up in Israel today. He claimed the heritage, and he went to the UN and said, you guys need to give us our own state. Right? The Palestinians are also claiming that heritage as well, right? Which is why this beef has been going on between them two. All right, let's go. Let's keep reading. Now let's find out how this empire acquired their political power. Which plays a very important role, right? The politics in when it comes to these different empires, the politics plays a very important role in maintaining a kingdom. You know what I mean? But all right, let's read. At its maximum extent, the independent country of Khazaria included the Jericho. Now, let's figure out the geography of this empire, right? It says the independent country of Khazaria included the geographic regions of southern Russia. Pay attention to that. Remember what I said earlier. Northern Caucasus, eastern Ukraine, 3, Crimea, western Kazakhstan, and northwest Uzbekistan. We call our oppressor the people that run Viacom and the people that run Hollywood, right? The people that run the World Bank, the people that run all the resources on the planet. These families, we call them cave dwellers. And when you look at these, what's been labeled Russia, southern Russia, northern Caucasus, eastern Ukraine, Crimea, Kazakhstan, northwestern Uzbekistan. Those are mountainous regions. And our oppressor likes to dwell on high. His habitation is on high. Let's get it. He likes to dwell in high places. Right? That's why when you look at America and you look at the structures of the world and you see all these tall skyscrapers, this is how he gets down. He likes to be in high places, right? He's the one that has established these metropolitan areas in these major cities with these tall buildings, right? Salakia. Give me 1 second, all right? So let's Salaka. Let me get let's go to, let me see if I can find it. It says this. Let's go to Obadiah chapter 1 verse 3, right? To show you that our oppressor likes to dwell in the clefts of the rocks. When you looked at all these movies about cavemen and cave dwellers, our oppressor is the one that whose family, whose ancestry and family history is known for being in the caves, which is why it mentions northern Caucasus and southern Russia, areas where it's mountainous regions. This is why it's bringing it up. It says this, Obadiah 1 verse 3, the pride of thine heart had deceived thee, though thou dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that say in his heart, who shall bring me to the ground? He dwells in the clefts of the rocks. That's where he dwells. He's a caveman. He's not an Israelite. We don't naturally just dwell in high places. That's not us. We dwell in the plains, right? You know, most black and Hispanic people are scared of heights anyways. Who the hell wants to be that high? Why the hell I gotta be? Why the hell I gotta see the clouds? When I'm, you know what I mean? Like, why we gotta be so? That's just not us. But him, he likes to dwell in the clefts of the rocks. He likes his habitation to be on high, and this is why I wanted to bring that up. But let's keep reading for sake of time. Other Turkic groups such as the Sabirs and the Bulgars came under Khazar jurisdiction during the 7th century. The Khazars forced some of the Bulgars to move to modern-day Bulgaria, with other Bulgars fled to the upper Volga River region, where the independent state of Volga, Bulgaria was founded. Let's keep reading. The Khazars had their greatest power over other tribes in the 9th century, controlling Eastern Slavs, Magyars, Pechenegs, Burtas, North Caucasian Huns. Now, the North Caucasian Huns, keep in mind, the Khazars, see, when you think about the Dukes of Edom, when you think about these different Edomite tribes, the Khazars are the top chieftain tribes, right? Compared to all these other Edomite tribes. And I want to say that the Irish are like, were at one point at the bottom. They were considered, listen, the Irish were considered, I want to be careful how I say this, but they were considered the bastards of all the Edomite tribes, right? I mean, they were treated, I mean, they just had no respect for them Irish. Now the Irish have become a force to be reckoned with, but there was a time where the Irish were like, come on, you're the lowest of you're the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to these Edomite tribes, right? But let's keep reading. Because of their jurisdiction over the area, the Caspian Sea was named the Khazar Sea, and even today, the Azeri, Turkish, Persian, and Arabic languages designate the Caspian by this term. In Turkish, Hazar Denizi; in Arabic, Bar ul Khazar; in Persian, Darari Khazar. But let's keep reading. Let me just jump. In addition to their role in indirectly bringing about the creation of the modern Balkan nation of Bulgaria, the Khazars played an even more significant role in European affairs by acting as a buffer state between the Islamic world and the Christian world. So this is what I was telling you earlier. The Khazaharian Empire, where it was situated, was between the Byzantine Empire and the Mohammedan Empire, right? Between the Christian states and the Islam states. And they played a significant role. They became what they called a buffer state, where all the trade went through there, and they were able to amass so much wealth and even tax traffickers that came in there to trade, right? Let's keep reading. Khazaria prevented Islam from significantly spreading north of the Caucasus Mountains. This was accomplished through a series of wars known as the Arab-Khazar Wars, which took place in the 7th and early 8th centuries. The wars established the Caucasus and the city of Derbent as the boundaries between Khazars and the Arabs, right? But give me a second. Let me get my other bookmark because I want to read something else. Salakia, let me find it. My other bookmark real quick. All right, one second, bear with me. Let me just see if there's any questions. All right, no sweat. Okay, let me just pull up my other bookmark real quick. I got what I wanted out of that one. So we're gonna go to for sake of time, we gotta move on this. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the conversion to Judaism. I think that's the one we want to get to. Salakia, bear with me. Let's see if I can find it. All right. All right, so let's go to, let me see if I can find this real quick. Let's get this real quick, all right? Salakia, bear with me. All right, 1 second. See if I can find it. Bear with me, y'all. Let me just pull up this. I want to pull up the right source. All right. 1 second. Okay. All right. Let's get this real quick. All right, so let's keep reading, right? It says, there's a quick synopsis. So by the beginning of the 7th century, the Khazars have become independent of the Turkic Empire to the east. We read that already, right? Oh, Salakia, let me just make sure I got this right. Salakia. Let me just get my source right. I want to make sure I give you the right source. All right. Okay, let me pull this up real quick. It says this, right? It says this. This is a blog of timesofisrael.com, right? It says this: it is well known that sometime in the 8th or 9th century, the Khazars, a warlike Turkic people, right? You got to keep in mind that the Lord has blessed the so-called white men with the sword. And these were a warlike people. It says converted to Judaism and ruled over a vast domain in what became southern Russia and Ukraine. What happened to them after the Russians destroyed the empire around the 11th century had been a mystery. Many speculated that the Khazars became the ancestors of the Ashkenazi Jews. And this is one of the biggest debates right here, is that the Ashkenazi Jews that you see today are, through many sources are claiming that they are they are descendants of the Khazaharian Empire. It says Arabs have long cited the Khazar hypothesis in attempts to deny a Jewish historical claim to the land of Israel, right? During the UN debate over Palestine partition, Chaim Weizmann responded sarcastically, "It is very strange. All my life I have been a Jew, felt like a Jew, and now learned that I am a Khazar." So now this person right here, he said this, right? Let me find out. So this guy by the name of Chaim Weizmann, right? He said this. He said, "It is very strange that all my life I have been a Jew, felt like a Jew, and now learned that I'm a Khazar. This is why we say that they are of the synagogue of Satan." A lot of them are coming to the understanding, even these rabbis are coming to the understanding that their lineage comes from the Khazarian Empire and not from the ancient Hebrew Israelites in the Bible. Let's keep reading. In a more folksy vein, Prime Minister Golda Meir famously said, "Khazar Shemaza, there is no Khazar people. I knew no Khazars in Kiev." Now here's the debate. They're trying to make it seem as if the Khazars did not exist, because there's a direct correlation between the Jewish man that you see today and the Khazars that they're talking about, right? But let me get to my other source real quick. Let me read this real quick. Contrarian Hungarian ex-communist and scientist author Kosler brought the Khazar hypothesis to a wider audience with the 13th tribe, in the hope that disproving a common Jewish racial identity would end anti-Semitism. Clearly that the hope has not been fulfilled. Most recently, left-wing Israeli historian Shlomo Sands, The Invention of the Jewish People, took Kosler's thesis in a direction he had not intended, arguing that because Jews were a religious community descended from converts, this guy wrote the book, The Invention of the Jewish People, they do not constitute a nation or need a state of their own. And this is what I said earlier. The Jewish man, after give Adolf a hand for almost wiping him out, but this so-called imposter went to the UN, went to the United Nations, and asked to constitute a nation or a state of his own, right? But let's keep reading. Let's keep reading. So this is the Times of Israel, right? This was written back in 2014. It says this: Israel seems finally to have thrown in the towel. A blue ribbon team of scholars from leading research institutions and museums has just issued a secret report to the government acknowledging that the European Jews are in fact Khazars. Whether this would result in any other not proposed to revise the words of Hadiva remains to be seen, right? This ain't something that, is hidden. There's so many scholars and there's so many scientists and so many archaeologists that are digging into this, that are coming to the realization that the European Jews are actually the Khazarians, right? Salakia, bear with me. Let's go to now Solomon, right? Solomon was instructed by Samuel, right, to kill all the Amalekites and to make sure that none of them are left alive. And when he goes to destroy the Amalekites, he kills everything. He doesn't do what Samuel told him, right? He keeps the king alive, and he keeps all the spoils of war, all the animals, right? And he disobeyed the Most High. And when Samuel found out he disobeyed the Most High, Samuel told Solomon that the kingdom would be ripped from him. Now, if Solomon had followed the instructions that the Most High had given him, these so-called Zionist Jews and the Jewish man today would have been wiped out. Now we're dealing with a bastard that is using wicked inventions and devices to destroy our people. All because Solomon wanted to glory with the king, having the king in his possession, and didn't do exactly what the Most High said. And the reason why the Most High wanted to kill every man, woman, and child of the Amalekites, who are descendants of the so-called Jewish man today. The reason why he wanted to do that is because when we were traveling, they decided to kill all the old and the people that were slow in the back, right? So the Lord never forgot what the Amalekites did to us, right? And they wouldn't let us pass through. But let's keep reading. Let's go to Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. Right? This is John having a revelation, and this is the Lord talking onto the angel of the church in Smyrna. It says this. And unto the angel, Revelation chapter 2, verse 8, and unto the angel of the church in Smyrna, write these things, saith, the first and the last which was dead and is alive. Verse 9, I know thy works, and tribulation, and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are of the synagogues of Satan. Listen, Nick Cannon, you are absolutely right. Right? In this sense, that we are the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. We are the Hebrew Israelites. And that's biblical, right? And it says this, but of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Viacom is of the synagogue of Satan. All these Hollywood producers, these Jewish Hollywood producers, and this Zionist movement, those that are in this, the Zionist Jews, the Ashkenazi Jews, they are of the synagogue of Satan. They are Satanists. They are not the children of the Lord. They are converts, as we've been reading about the Khazars and how they're showing different accounts of it, right? But let's keep, let's pull up one more real quick. Let's go to Salakia. We got about 5 minutes. Let's go to Okay, let's read this real quick. Salaki, let me just get this real quick. All right, let's let me pull up this source real quick. All right. Okay. All right, so now let's finish where we left off. It says the Khazaharians long served as a buffer state between the Byzantine Empire and both the nomads of the northern steppes and the Umayyad Caliphate. After serving as Byzantine's proxy against the Sasanian Persian Empire, the alliance was dropped around 900. Byzantine began to encourage the allies to attack Khazaria and weaken its hold on Crimea and Caucasus, while seeking to obtain an entity with the rising Rus power to the north, which is aspired to convert to Christianity. Between 1965 and 1969, the Kievan Rus ruler, meaning he was the Russian ruler, conquered the capital Atil and destroyed the Khazar states. So this is when the Khazar state actually got destroyed, right? I want to say it was around 1100 AD, right? And what happened is those people ended up being banished to different parts of Europe. And so when that whole empire got decimated, a lot of the history got decimated with it. So a lot of these accounts come from those that who the Khazars went to war with, which is those accounts that we get today. Well, let me just put one more. Salakia. Okay, last one right here. The conversion of Khazars to Judaism is reported by external sources in the Khazar correspondence, although doubts persist. Hebrew documents whose authenticity was long and doubted and challenged are now widely accepted by specialists as either authentic or as reflecting internal Khazar traditions. Archaeal evidence for conversion, on the other hand, remains elusive and may reflect incompleteness or excavations on the stratum of actual adherence was thin. So it says this, right? Let's keep Jews from both the Islamic world and the Byzantine are known to have migrated to Khazaria during periods of persecution under Heraclius, Justinian II, Leo III, and Romanus Lecapenus. From Simon Shama, Jewish communities from Balkans and Bosphorian Crimea, especially from Pantispaeum, began migrating to a more hospitable climate of pagan Khazaria in the wake of these persecutions, and were joined by the Jews from Armenia. The Geniza fragments, he argues, makes it clear that Judaism reforms sent roots down into the whole of the population. The pattern is one of an elite conversion preceding large-scale adoption of a new religion by a general population, which often resisted the imposition. So what we got to understand is that the Khazarian Empire was a mecca for a lot of the Jewish people that were being persecuted from the Byzantine Empire to the Mohammedan era. So it was a mecca for all of them started to go, and all the influence started to flood. Judaism really started to flood into this empire. And a lot of the nobility took on Judaism, and this is how you get a whole population, a high percentage of the population to become converts, right? Salakia. But real quickly, right? Um, it says this: the suggestion that Khazars adopted Judaism as early as 740 A.D. is based on the idea in part that it was a reassertion of independence with regard to both Byzantine and Caliphate with the Muslims, while conforming to general Eurasian trend to embrace a world religion. And so what the Khazaharian Empire did was they embraced Judaism because it was a world religion, and they allowed an influx of Jewish people to come into this empire, and that's how a lot of them became converts. And I think we're going to end it right there. That's my time. We'll get more into that. I'll probably do this class some other time. You know, but it's a pretty hot topic. It's kind of, it's sad that Nick Cannon dropped the ball. But if you want to know more, this is common knowledge who the Khazars were. There's quite a few books out there that you can read. A lot of people are, the biggest debate is the correlation between the Ashkenazi Jews and the Khazarian Empire. And with that, we're going to class. Remember tonight at 9 p.m. tonight, tune into Black Watch with Commander General Yohana at 9 p.m. Tune in. It's very important to catch the show. And with that, shalom.